I am 93 years old, and I want to be careful about how I say what I'm about to say, because this isn't a list. It isn't advice. It's just what happened when a life went on long enough that certain things fell away. Not because I decided to release them, but because they became impossible to hold on to once I could see them clearly. My name is Eleanor. I have been alive through things that feel now like they belong to another world entirely. A childhood without television, a marriage that lasted until death, the loss of people I could not imagine surviving without. I survived, and what I found on the other side of each loss was a cleaner version of myself, lighter, less cluttered with things that had never mattered as much as I thought they did. I want to tell you what those things were, not to instruct you, just to show you what the view looks like from here. What I carried for too long. For most of my adult life, I was afraid of what people thought of me. Not in a way I would have admitted. I was proud. I was competent. I ran a household and raised children and held down work and managed by most external measures to appear entirely confident. But underneath that, quietly and constantly, I was monitoring. How did I come across in that conversation? Did she think I was too much? Was I dressed appropriately? Did I speak too long at dinner? It was exhausting, and it was invisible, even to me, for decades. The thing that finally cracked it open happened on a Tuesday evening in April of 1967. I was 37 years old. April 1967. My husband, Edward, and I had attended a dinner party at the home of some people we knew through his work. I had spent the entire evening performing, not lying, nothing dramatic like that. Just a subtle, constant performance of being the right version of myself, laughing at the right moments, softening my opinions when they became too sharp, agreeing with things I didn't entirely agree with. We drove home in silence, and Edward, who was a quiet man, an observant man, a man who noticed things without always saying them, turned to me as we pulled into our street and said very gently, "Ellie, where were you tonight?" I said I didn't know what he meant. He didn't push it. He never pushed. But he was right, and I knew it. I had not been there. I had sent a very polished, very careful representative in my place, and that representative had smiled and deflected and managed the entire evening, and I had come home with nothing. No real conversation, no real connection, nothing but the dull residue of 4 hours of performance. I promised myself that night that I would stop. I kept that promise for about 3 weeks. And then the next dinner party arrived, and the anxiety arrived with it, and I put the costume back on, and I wore it for another 20 years. What I stopped caring about first. Other people's opinions fell away slowly. Not all at once. That would make a tidier story. It happened through accumulation, through enough losses, enough years, enough mornings sitting in a kitchen that had grown quiet to understand that the people whose opinions I had contorted myself to manage, most of them weren't thinking about me at all. They were managing their own performance. They were afraid of their own version of the same thing. And the ones whose opinions I had lost the most sleep over, where are they now? A few have died. A few drifted. Most of them I couldn't name without effort. I spent 30 years afraid of people I barely remember. That is the arithmetic of that particular worry. And when you do the arithmetic honestly, it becomes very hard to continue taking it seriously. The way to perfection. I was a perfectionist. I don't mean that as a compliment, the way people mean it in job interviews. I mean it as a confession. I cleaned a house that was already clean. I remade beds that had already been made. I worried over meals that no one would remember eating, trying to make them exactly right, as if exactness were a form of love. It wasn't. It was fear wearing the costume of love. My daughter Catherine, she's 68 now, told me a few years ago that when she was growing up, she felt like the house was more important than the people in it. She said it kindly. She is kind. But it landed in me like a stone, because she was right, and I had known it for a long time without knowing I knew it. The hours I spent chasing a perfection that no one needed. The Sunday afternoons that could have been slow and full of conversation that I turned into cleaning projects. The quiet disapproval I let people feel when things weren't as I thought they should be. Perfectionism is not high standards. It is anxiety that has convinced itself its virtue. It took me until my late 60s to truly understand that. Edward. My husband Edward died in 1991. He was 64. A heart attack, very sudden, no warning. He was in the garden. It was a Saturday morning in October. He had been out there since breakfast, doing the things he did on Saturday mornings. Small, patient, unhurried things that I used to watch through the kitchen window without fully appreciating. I found him. I won't describe what that was like. Some things don't need to be put into words. What I'll tell you is what I learned from it. I learned that the Saturday mornings had been the whole thing, not our wedding, not the trips we saved up for, not Christmas or any particular occasion I had arranged carefully, just Edward in the garden on a Saturday, just the quiet of that, just his particular way of being slow and certain in everything he did. I had been there for all of it, technically. I had been in the same house, looking through the same window, but I had been thinking about what needed doing next. I had missed him in 100 small ways while he was still alive to be found. The friend I competed with. There was a woman named Vivian. We met in 1958 when our children were small and our husbands both worked for the same firm. We were close for 20 years, the kind of close that is woven into the ordinary fabric of your days. But underneath the closeness, I kept a running comparison. Her house against mine, her children against mine, her marriage, her figure, her Christmas cards, her career when she eventually went back to work. I was not cruel about it. I never said any of it aloud, but I felt it constantly. That quiet, grinding measuring of myself against another woman, as if we were in a race I had never agreed to run. Vivian had a stroke in 1989 and never fully recovered. I sat with her many times in the years that followed. She was different after. Softer somehow, less defended. And in that softness, I found someone I liked more than the woman I had spent years quietly competing with. I liked her more because I had stopped comparing, and I understood, sitting with her in those quieter years, how much of our friendship I had been absent from, how many afternoons I had spent cataloging her advantages instead of simply enjoying her company. She died in 1997. And what I grieved was not only her. I grieved the version of our friendship that competition had taken from me. What I stopped caring about next, being right, that one took the longest. I was a woman who had opinions, and I held them. And I was frequently correct, and I did not always wear that lightly, not in a loud way. In a quiet, persistent way, the way of someone who would rather silently endure a poor decision than let go of the judgment that a poor decision was being made. My children felt this. Edward felt this. Not always, but enough. The grief of losing Edward blew a great deal of that out of me. Grief is efficient in that way. It strips away what is inessential very quickly. When you are sitting in a house that no longer has a person in it, the need to be right about small things becomes not just unimportant but incomprehensible. Who was it for? What had I been protecting? I still have opinions. I still know things. But somewhere in my late 60s, the armor of needing to be seen as correct came loose, and I let it fall, and I have not once wished I still had it on. The busyness I mistook for a life. I want to talk about something that I see in every young person who visits me. My granddaughter Laura is 36. She comes on Sunday afternoons when she can manage it, which is not every week. She has a job that follows her everywhere. There is no leaving it behind. It comes with her in the little rectangle in her pocket. She has a husband, a child who is 3, a life that is full in every direction. When she is here, she is mostly here. But I watch her eyes go somewhere else sometimes, in the middle of a sentence. I watch her remember something she needs to do. I watch the effort it takes her to come back. I know that effort. I know it from the inside. I was that woman. For 20 years, I was that woman, busy in the way that feels like purpose, moving through the days at a pace that felt at the time like evidence of a life well used. But busyness is not the same as presence. You can be busy in every direction and still be somewhere else entirely. And the life you are living, the actual, specific, irreplaceable life happening around you, can go by entirely in your peripheral vision. I want to put my hand on Laura's and say, come back. Whatever you just remembered can wait. This, right now, this is the thing, the appearance of things. Another thing I stopped caring about, how it looked, the house, the clothes, the presentation of a life that was tidy and ordered and above criticism. I have already told you about the perfectionism, but this is a little different. This is about the energy I spent on the surface of things at the expense of what was underneath them. The dinner parties where everything was arranged beautifully and the conversation never went anywhere real. The photographs where everyone was positioned correctly and no one was actually feeling the thing the photograph was supposed to capture. The years I spent making sure our life looked like a life I would have approved of. At 75, I stopped. Not all at once, gradually. I started leaving the washing up for the morning. I stopped ironing things that didn't need to be ironed. I let conversations go where they wanted to go instead of steering them toward acceptable destinations. And life got warmer. It got actually warmer. There is no other word for it. The mess I had spent decades preventing was, it turned out, the texture of living. And texture is not something to be smoothed away. The loss I couldn't name. I want to tell you about a loss that is harder to explain than the others. It is the loss of myself. Somewhere between 35 and 60, I lost track of what I actually thought and felt and wanted beneath all the performing and perfecting and comparing and managing. I had opinions I'd borrowed from other people, preferences I'd adopted because they seemed appropriate, a personality that was real in places and constructed in others, and I had stopped being able to tell the difference. I don't think this is unusual. I think it happens quietly, over years, to a great many people. The recovery of it is slow and not dramatic. It looked like this. Sitting alone on a Wednesday afternoon with nothing requiring my attention and asking myself, what do I actually want to do right now? Not what should be done, not what would look right, not what would be approved of. What do I want? It took years before I could answer that question without first thinking about what everyone else would think of the answer, but I got there. And the person I found underneath all the construction was someone I liked. She was quieter than the version I had presented to the world, more uncertain, more easily moved by small things. She was better company than the polished version. I wish I'd introduced her sooner. The last thing I stopped caring about is the hardest to say. I stopped caring about later, not in a reckless way, not in the way of abandoning plans or ignoring the future, but the habit, the deep, lifelong habit of deferring the real living to a time when things would be more settled, when I would be less busy, when I would finally have the space to be fully inside my own life. That time never arrived as a destination. It was always now. It was always today. And I spent decades treating today as a corridor and arriving at 93, understanding that the corridor was the house. There is no room at the end of the hall where everything finally opens up and you are fully present and life is as you imagined. There is only the hallway, and whether you are actually walking it or whether you are just trying to get through it. 4 words. If I had to give you anything, any single thing from 93 years, it would be 4 words. Put it down now. Whatever you are carrying that doesn't belong to you, the opinion you've been performing, the perfection you've been chasing, the comparison you've been running, the surface you've been maintaining. Put it down now, not later, not when life slows down, not when you feel ready. Now, today, in this ordinary hour, because ordinary hours are not waiting rooms. They are the destination. Put it down now. Before we finish, I am sitting in a room I have lived in for 41 years. The window looks out at a garden that Edward planted. The tree he put in during the first summer we were here is enormous now. It took over a corner of the garden in a way he would have found satisfying and slightly alarming. I look at it every morning. I don't clean the house the way I used to. I don't worry about what the neighbors think. I don't iron anything. I sit by this window and I let the morning be what it is. It took me 80 years to earn this kind of morning. I am not telling you this to make you envious. I am telling you because you are somewhere in the middle of something. A life, a decade, a week that is more ordinary than it will seem in 30 years. The things that are cluttering it, the worry about how you appear, the need to be right, the busyness you've confused with living, the performance you put on before you go out into the world, none of it is serving you. All of it is borrowing time from your actual life. The person across from you at dinner tonight deserves the real you, not the arranged version. The morning you're moving through right now deserves your full attention. Not tomorrow, not next week, this morning, this hour, this moment where you are actually physically alive and here and capable of being fully inside it. Put it down now. That's what I came here to say. Everything else I've managed to put down. And I promise you, from 93, it is lighter on the other side.